to Euronews tonight. Violence committed in Myanmar during the recent Rohingya crisis may qualify as crimes against humanity. That's according to the International Criminal Court, which has approved an investigation into Myanmar's treatment of the Rohingya people. The Southeast Asian nation is facing mounting global pressure over a 2017 crackdown on the Muslim minority group. The campaign forced over 700,000 Rohingya to flee to camps in neighbouring Bangladesh. UN investigators say Myanmar carried out the operation with genocidal intent. Well, let's cross over now to Arizona, where we can speak to Dr. Simon Adams, who's the Executive Director of the Global Center for the Responsibility to Protect. Simon, thanks very much for speaking to us. Myanmar's now got these multiple lawsuits being taken out against their court action, I should say. Will this force the government to change its relationship with the Rohingya Muslim population that it's got?
Well, you'd certainly hope that that might be the case. Certainly, the last couple of years have been a terrible time for the Rohingya minority, who have endured genocide and have had to flee. The vast majority of the population have had to flee to Bangladesh to take sanctuary. So we now see the walls are kind of closing in on the generals who have perpetrated this genocide. We have the case at the International Court of Justice, which was just filed this week. We now have the announcement of the International Criminal Court, which is about individual criminal responsibility rather than state responsibility at the ICJ. And we also have a case in Argentina under universal jurisdiction. So I think it's just an example of how, that perpetrators always want silence, but survivors and victims demand justice.
And why are all of these cases coming out at the same time? Is anything to be read into that?
I don't think so. I mean, we've been very involved, for example, in the ICJ case and working with the wonderful government of the Gambia, but that's been a process that's been going on for about a year. The ICC case has been bubbling in the background for at least that long. And so I think that it's just coincidental that they both happened in the same week. And I think, but all of these things are sort of coming at the same time because people, 2 years on after the genocide, people see that there hasn't been any kind of process of accountability for people who carried out the crime of crimes.
Now, Myanmar isn't a signatory to the International Criminal Court, so will these investigations actually lead to any of the accountability that you're calling for?
Yeah, but Bangladesh is, and most of the refugees ended up in Bangladesh, and that's how this court has actually, in this case, I should say, has ended up at the International Criminal Court. I'm also, as I said, very interested in the ICJ case, which would have a huge symbolic importance. It's only the third time in the history of the International Court of Justice that there's ever been a filing against a state for breaching the Genocide Convention. And there are all kinds of measures, including reparations and other kinds of provisional measures that the International Court of Justice can put in place. So I certainly hope that happens.
And what sort of conditions are the Rohingya population facing at the moment?
I mean, the Rohingya are probably the most persecuted minority group in the world. Those who remain in Myanmar, who is now a small minority of the overall population of the Rohingya in the world, are basically stateless, stripped of any kinds of civil and political rights. All their movement, their ability to marry, almost everything they do is governed by the state and is in a state of intense persecution. Meanwhile, those, of course, who have managed to flee the atrocities in Myanmar and across the border in Bangladesh, are essentially cut off from their homeland, cut off from ways of earning a living, cut off from everything that they've known. And so the circumstances for them are very bad indeed. And there is almost 900,000 of them now across the border in Bangladesh who need to go home.
Dr. Simon Adams, thank you very much for your insight there, joining us from Arizona.